So, to set the scene, I'm sitting outside at a Starbucks, pre COVID, of course, having a cup of coffee with a newspaper reporter that wants to know what recovery means to me and the value of peer support. All right. I'm honored that you feel that the story of my successful recovery is worth writing about, but I want to make it clear before we begin that even though this is my story, this isn't about me. It's about the person who might pick it up and read this article at just the right moment in their lives, and bam, magic will strike again. So while your motivations are to write a feel-good article to try and sell papers, keep in mind that the story you write may have more impact on a person's life than you can possibly fathom. Because for me, recovery happened quite by accident, and it took three seemingly unrelated events to occur at just the precise moments of my life. Your article could be one of those moments for somebody. In 2001, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder after an almost successful suicide attempt that put me in the ICU for 4 days, followed by a 4-week inpatient stay. For 10 to 15 years, under the illness chemical model, I attempted to fix my disease. I say 10 to 15 years because there's a 5 to 7 year period in which there were so many chemicals affecting my brain chemistry that I have very little to no memory of that time. Ultimately, the cure became worse than the disease, and I found myself unemployed, homeless, with no medical care. Obamacare didn't exist at that time. And in the 3 or so year process that it takes to be approved for SSDI. I can't tell you how many generous people let me stay on their couch during that time. You remember the movie Half-Baked and the guy on the couch? That was fucking me, man. And it was hilarious in the movie, but when I lived that part, it wasn't so funny. When I finally was approved for SSDI, I didn't see it as a victory to be celebrated, but rather as the ultimate failure and admission of defeat. I felt that what I had at that moment, which was $1,200 a month and minimal health insurance, was the best thing I was ever going to be able to hope for. My medication provider even told me that very thing shortly after my SSDI approval. And even though I now have many more good days than bad, I still have the occasional time when the darkness takes over and I wish I hadn't been approved so that I could have taken Plan B. But I would have succeeded that time, and I wouldn't be telling you this now. For myself and many others in recovery, our successful recovery is determining how long we stay in this lifetime. So, with part of my back pay, I purchased an awesome gaming computer, and I began playing massive multiplayer online games as a means of social interaction. It was my only means of social interaction. Aside from my 1 hour per month with a caseworker, 1 hour with my job coach so that I could get Medicaid, and 15 minutes with my medication provider, for 3 years my only means of socialization was through my computer. I met an Australian named Brett, and together he and I hacked and slashed our way throughout Neverwinter, taking no prisoners. He was an Arnold Schwarzenegger-sized paladin and was perfect for my skinny elven ass to hide behind and land that perfectly timed kill blow at the right moment. The only way we could be defeated was by hacking, but I digress. One day, as Brett and I were in the library waiting for our next match to begin, he asked the question that people inevitably always ask everybody, and wanted to know what I did for work. I replied, "I can't work, man. I'm bipolar." His immediate reply was, and it was one of 3 times I've ever heard him raise his voice, "Dude, what you just said is a crock of shit on so many levels. First of all, you are not bipolar. You have bipolar disorder. And second, you can work, man, because I carry the same diagnostic label that you do, and I work my fucking ass off. So don't ever say the word can't to me again, please. Okay?" I gotta tell you, man, being yelled at by an Aussie who never raises his voice is a very surreal experience. And it was also a profound moment for me because it was the first time that any person, professional or otherwise, had challenged my saying I can't. And what started as a little ball of snow rolling down the hill turned into an avalanche impossible to stop. Simultaneous to this, I watched a video of a football star that I had respected growing up that documented his struggle with bipolar disorder. The word recover was still not really a thing in the mental health world, aside from being used in the addiction paradigm. So while it wasn't called it by name, the documentary was nothing more than his recovery story. Sometimes as a peer, we help people we've never even met, and we also never even get to see that we've helped them. As I looked at the timeline of his story, I saw so many similarities that I could literally pinpoint where I was on his timeline. I admired where his timeline ultimately ended up, and I thought to myself, if I've already matched the beginning of his timeline, certainly I can duplicate the second half. It was the first time that I'd ever had a sense of hope that I wrote this sentence to be funny. It was the first time I'd ever had a sense of hope that I could be anything more than a couch potato who was really fucking good at kicking the shit out of arrogant orcs and stinky goblins. And finally one day, I bumped into a social worker at a gas station who I had once worked with. She asked how I was. I smiled and said, "Great." She then asked, "Really? Brian, how are you? You can tell me the truth this time." So I told her what was up. She told me of a new mental health center that had opened in town and that was doing things very differently, and she had witnessed people's lives completely transformed. She gave me a card and told me I should give them a call. She called it the recovery model. Fucking great, I thought. Now I have a social worker trying to enlist me into a cult. The enthusiasm with which she spoke when she talked of the success of this agency's program had me convinced that I'd soon be walking around bald, handing flowers out at airports. Nevertheless, I promised to call the place. Handing out flowers might be more fulfilling than killing orcs, who knows. So when you called me and told me you wanted to interview me about what recovery means to me and what the value of peer support is, this is what I've come up with. Recovery means to me that I have an ability to live a life that I've never dreamed would be possible. And not only do I have that ability, I am living that life. And if you still don't understand the value of peer support from what I've already told you, allow me to finish this little diatribe with an illustration of words. One day, an ordinary Joe was walking on his path through life and he fell into a hole. And it was a big fucking hole. And he thought to himself, holy shit, this hole is so big I'm never going to be able to get out of here. And he resigned himself to his fate. One day a priest walked by and looked down into the hole, and Joe was relieved. "Oh, thank God you're here, Father. I can't get out of this hole. Can you help me?" The priest nodded and said a prayer, and then walked away singing a hymn. But Joe still found himself in the hole. Then a doctor walked by the hole. "Can you help me out?" Joe implored. The doctor nodded, wrote a prescription, dropped it in the hole for Joe, got in his BMW and took off. But alas, Joe was still stuck in the hole. Then one magical day, after a string of unexplainable coincidences, another ordinary Joe came along the path and saw Joe in the hole. He looked in the hole and said, "Damn, man, that looks like a deep hole. You need a hand out of there?" The first Joe said, "How the hell are you going to get me out of here?" The second Joe immediately jumped headlong into the hole. The first Joe said, "Are you fucking crazy, man? How the hell are we going to get out of here now?" The second Joe simply replied, "Yeah, man, I'm just as crazy as you are to jump into a hole this big. In fact, maybe even more so, but that's beside the point. The point is, I've been in this fucking hole before. I know how much it sucks to be here, and more importantly, I found a way out. So let's get you the hell out of here." Sometimes a peer is the only one that knows the way out of the hole. There's no way to thank everyone who has helped me to get where I'm at, and there's no way to apologize to all that I've hurt. There's damage that I've caused that will never be mitigated. I can sit here and dwell on the guilt, which is immense and will never be abated, or I can live my life in recovery as a peer and try to help other individuals get there quicker than I did. I also now try to never forget to thank the people who helped me to continue to be successful. The thing is, nobody, whether they have a mental health issue or not, should go it alone, and the only thing I'd say to people that insist they do so themselves, don't be stupid in your pride. It makes me laugh though. Unless you're a peer, you won't get this. I get just as much, and even more perhaps, from my interaction with peers than they do from me, and still they want to pay me money to do this as a job. If legislators and insurance companies ever really knew that secret, they would be billing me for my own services to my peers. But don't write about that part though. So now when people ask me what I do for work, I proudly state I'm a peer advocate for individuals with disabilities, even though I haven't been paid to do that work for almost 5 years and I don't really have a job to speak of at the moment. It amazes me and even makes me laugh sometimes that the responses I hear in reply. But once in a while, once in a blue moon, somebody simply says, "Thanks, man. Somebody like you saved my life once." And I make an instant connection with a stranger that is totally unique to peers. And I can't think of a moment in my life that's better than when that happens. So go ahead and ask your questions now.